Good evening and welcome to Top 25 right now, presented by the Sportscast. Today is April 24th, 2024. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channels YouTube, Twitter, Twitch.tv, and Apple Podcasts. If you are on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review to help us out tremendously. We are also on DAB Digital Radio. You can listen to us on your smart speaker play Sportscast. Visit us on the sportscast.net. Also follow us on Twitter, Sportscast1, and check out the Sportscast in the iOS App Store. Hello, my name is Alan West. Welcome to the Top 25 Rundown, NFL Draft Edition. Today I am joined by David Heilman from Dynasty Dorks Fantasy Football, podcast host at the SGP Network, and senior Dynasty analyst at SGPN Fantasy. How are we doing tonight, David?
Doing great. It's Christmas Eve. Cannot wait to see the action tomorrow. I think it's going to be one of the more exciting drafts we've seen in a long time.
I agree. I mean, although it's like the first pick's kind of a foregone conclusion, but I think that the ones from number one, the 256, it's going to be something. The only question is who's going to be picked, what spot, and what impact will they make later on if they can survive training camp.
Absolutely.
So, for your Christmas Eve, what has been the big present draft wise that you have been focused on?
Yeah, I mean, this draft is really it's a passing league, and we have, four, five, maybe six quarterbacks going in the first round. I think more than likely you see four, if not five. It's very, very rare to see six. I don't know if we've seen six in a long time, but probably, four or five quarterbacks going first round. You got probably five or six receivers, and then you got big left tackles. There's probably six left tackles, if not seven left tackles that go. And so that's going to be half of your first round is quarterbacks, receivers, and left tackles. I got to go to the combine and do the media and partake in some of the questioning and interviews of the quarterbacks and everybody. And there's a lot of excitement and buzz. There's a lot of trades that could happen tomorrow. It's exciting.
All right, that's definitely it's a good way to start for it. And just because I've been looking up some of the information myself, although being an Ohio State fan, watching how the end of the year went, how did you feel about Marvin Harrison Jr. not participating in the combine or the pro day for Ohio State?
Yeah.
Just your personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I love the quote that came out today. He said that they said, "What did you do during this time?" And he said, I trained on how to play football, not how to do drills." And so, a lot of people do talk about how the combine drills aren't necessarily, football drills. Some of them are, some of them aren't. And he's the player that he had a lot to lose. I made that comment, and some people disagreed, but I feel like he had more to lose than to gain. If he goes out there and tears an Achilles, tears an ACL, he's in trouble. The worst thing's going to happen to him that is he goes, number five or six instead of four, and by not working out. But if he got hurt, it could really hurt his career.
100%, 100%. I mean, watching how he was in college, I'm curious to see where he's going to end up, just because I feel like as long as he stays healthy, he has the potential to be a game-changing receiver like his father was.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are penciling him right there at Arizona. Arizona could move back. They could move back and end up, somebody else moves up for a quarterback. Then, let's just say the Giants move from 6 to 4. Then the Giants take JJ McCarthy or Drake May. And then, Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. go the next two picks to Chargers and Arizona. So, I think Arizona, I think the Chargers, But who knows? He's a really good player. People could want to trade up for him. Daniel Jeremiah, I think trade had the Jets trading up for him at one point.
Okay. Yep. See, looks like we've already had a few trades for the draft already. And
Yeah, we had a couple
uh,
trades. The Minnesota Vikings moved from the second round to the first round, positioning themselves for a couple different things. So, the Minnesota Vikings, a lot of mock drafts, they are using pick 23 to get up into the, top five picks where they're able to select one of those quarterbacks. So if you do see the mock drafts, that's typically what they're doing. But if let's say they really do like Michael Penix, it gives them an opportunity to move around the board. If they want to get him a little later, they could take him at 11 or at 23. They have the ability to move up. But it does sound, everyone thinks that they're going to be making a shot at either getting Drake May because Josh McCown actually coached Drake May in high school. This connection there at the 3 spot or the 5
mhm.
spot for Drake May or McCarthy.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's very true. And uh, real quick, we did have our Jack of all trades master, them, Mr. Bob Alvis, join in right now, sir. Good to see you here.
How's it going, guys?
Doing well. How are you, Bob?
Good, Dave. How are you?
Doing great.
So, Bob, as Dave so eloquently put it, today is Christmas Eve in regards to the NFL draft.
Okay. Well, I'll leave out some cookies for Santa tonight then and have him come down the chimney to get them.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't know your
Very
team is,
nice.
Bob.
I'm a Saints guy, Dave.
Well, hopefully you get what you want when you unwrap the presents tomorrow. I'm not sure if you want a lineman or an edge. What are you looking for?
I'll take anything that can help the club, so to speak. I know that's a cliche answer, but at this point, that's what I want.
I know
I
for
mean,
the Commanders, we need a quarterback. So,
Commanders are in a nice spot. They got 6 picks in the top 100. And so, and they are one of those teams that, there's so many needs that, you can take the best player available and it probably fits a need. So you take quarterback at 2,
mhm.
figure out the rest. They have been pretty aggressive this offseason, but they've need pass rushers. They traded both of those away. They could not cover anybody last year, so they need defensive backs, and then they could not block. I think Sam Howell was sacked like 60 times in the first 14 weeks, so they need some linemen.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely curious to see about that. One thing I did want to mention real quick before we get into full draft status, the NCAA admitted that Reggie Bush finally is getting his 2005 Heisman restored to him. The question is how much repercussions we're going to have from that regarding other teams and other situations for the pay for play. So that's something that Bob Yumi will hit on probably in another week,
Okay.
just because I figured today the NFL draft deserves their discussion and seeing how it's going to go. So, David, what do you think about for your let's do your top 5 picks first.
Well, like I said, I do think you're probably going to see some trades, but there's a lot of. I mean, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that Caleb Williams is going at 1, and there's been a late push. Jaden Daniels seems like he's very much the consensus pick at 2. And so the draft really starts at 3. Daniel Jeremiah came out today and said that, talking to free agents, talking to other GMs around the league, the Patriots said that they were going to draft they told free agents they're going to sign Jacoby Brissett, and then they're going to draft a quarterback. So I don't know if they trade at 3. They probably stick and pick. I think it's going to be Drake May at the 3 spot, and then you have the 4. And so that's where it gets interesting because 4 and 5 could easily trade back. And so I will go Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4 to the Arizona Cardinals. And then at 5, I do think that's where you see JJ McCarthy. And so either the Giants move up 1 spot to block the Vikings, or the Vikings move up to 5 and get him. But I do think you see 4 quarterbacks in the first 5 picks.
Wow. I didn't feel like McCarthy was going to be a top 5 pick, but just seeing how I guess he's been rising since I guess, well, he didn't play in Senior Bowl, but just watching how his draft stock's gone up, I guess it wouldn't be a surprise. I just would figure more that say Michael Penix maybe, or I wouldn't say Bo Nix is going to be a first round. I think he's more of a second round if he's lucky, honestly. But I wouldn't have thought McCarthy was going to be a top 5 pick myself.
No, Dan Graziano's insider with the Giants, and they said the Giants really do like him. And they said Penix could go as high as 6 to the Giants if they don't make that trade up. I'm not sure if they'd pick him over McCarthy or not. The Giants have spent a lot of resources on quarterbacks, and so I'd be very surprised if the Giants did not draft a quarterback very early, especially with them being, picking at 6. They could easily move up if they need to, or take the best available at 6.
Okay, that is true. I did see a stat regarding the Cardinals that you remember Larry Fitzgerald, their wide receiver who they drafted from Pitt, correct?
Yep.
Did he do that in his entire career? He had more tackles than drop passes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great stat.
He had 42 tackles compared to only 31 drop passes throughout his entire career. So that was I heard about that today and I was like, you know what? That's something I gotta say on here, even though it's not 100% draft, but seeing how Fitzgerald is going to be a Hall of Famer and how he came out of Pittsburgh after winning 2 Bolitnikovs, that was something that I thought was pretty cool to read about.
Yeah, it's great.
Dave,
Now,
I hate to use the
Bob,
word bust real quick. I
how
want to
much
ask
of the
Dave real
draft have
quick.
you looked at?
I wanted to ask Dave real quick. I hate to use the word bust, but is there anybody in the top 5 or top 6 that you have a red flag on? If you were doing the pick.
Yeah, and so Drake May is someone that you hear all these things. The comparison to Justin Herbert, the comparison to Josh Allen makes you really, really want to draft him. But you also, when you look at it, Dale Jeremiah talked about this, and Bucky Brooks, you want to see a guy have a signature win. You want to see him take over games, and there should be no excuses if he's going to be the guy. And so, last year we saw with CJ Stroud, I know they lost, but he really stepped up in the, in the not the championship game, but in the college football playoffs, ran the ball a little bit. I think he elevated his stock. Justin Herbert did that. There's no signature games for Drake May. He played in the ACC, so we didn't have a whole lot of competition as far as, playing SEC opponents every week. But yeah, I don't know how many times where he took over the game or had a signature win. And so that's a concern for a guy that they're also saying could be a year out. And so if he goes to the Patriots, I'm very concerned because I think that most of the quarterbacks are it's really heavily based on their landing spot. And so, we could all agree Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. But Brock Purdy's had a whole lot more success because he was dropped into a much better situation. And so whoever goes to Minnesota is in a much better situation than going to New England. And so if Drake May ends up there, it's a comment. Like, I'm already concerned about him. I'd be very concerned about him going to the New England.
Any concern with Caleb Williams' theatrics that we've heard off the field of, on the field, you can't question what he does. Absolutely not. But off the field, from what the media reports sometimes, like that almost sounds, I'd hate to use the word diva, but it almost sounds diva-ish in certain ways. Any concern?
Oh, for sure. There's concerns about that because you're right now you're in a very, very tough division. And so you're gonna have to deal with all that, and he's had to deal with it. There's stuff with that, but I will say that he's, everything you see on the field, this kid's been good. And so I'd rather a kid that loves the game. There's no off the field stuff. It's more this stuff that is more, kind of a different generation. And so, and this is Chicago embraced Dennis Rodman, and he's not even half of what Dennis Rodman married himself. I don't think Caleb Williams is there yet.
Michael Jordan's not on the Bears though.
No, he is not.
Although the Bears did talk about a new stadium today, which will have a top if they actually make it.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to be because you can't really picture Chicago with the stadium having a cover on it.
Well,
at least I can't, but
that home field advantage has not seemed to work out. So, maybe they got to try something different, but you'd think, hey, it's going to be a home field advantage. They have two playoff wins in the last 25, 30 years.
mm-hmm.
I think with the Bears,
their
you're looking for an identity. And I don't know that the identity with the Bears, I don't know if that seeps in with the playoff wins, but I'm the older guy here. So if you go back to the 80s, late 80s, Bears had the identity on defense for a while. Even in the 90s, for the early part, it was still on the defense. Even with Urlacher, it was still a little bit defensively, but I don't know where the Bears' identity has lied for the past 10 to 15.
Yeah, they've had the identity's been that they're a crap show.
Right.
And so, but one person, I forget who mentioned it, but this is a pretty good situation, and this is a much, much better situation than you had when Justin Fields was drafted in Chicago. The team really did a nice job parlaying that pick last year into several picks. You went and go get Montez Sweat, which was a big move. Jalen Johnson, re-signing him. They haven't had the sexiest offseason, but they re-signed key players. And then, like I said, they got DJ Moore plus Caleb Williams plus extra picks for that pick last year. And then Keenan Allen for a fourth. Yep. Caleb Williams said it himself. Like I said, I got to go to the combine and participate in the media. And Caleb Williams was like, I don't know why people say I don't want to go to Chicago. They're 7-9 last year, and they got the number one pick. I don't know how many teams with the number one pick had won 7 games the year before. So we'll see if they can get over the hump. It's a tough division. Green Bay is getting better. Minnesota is good, and Detroit's really good.
Oh, if Carolina had a do-over.
I put a list of the most lopsided trades out there, and somebody immediately was like, Carolina needs to be on this list, sir. It's like, you are absolutely right. That was an awful trade. When the owner, it's like draft day.
That one.
Draft day, the movie.
Yep.
In real life, the owner got too involved.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you're going to go for bad picks, you would also have Ricky Williams to the Saints. How Dickey gave away all the picks for him. Now, I mean, even technically, you could say RG3 a little bit too, honestly.
Yeah, RG3,
How
Trey
Snyder
Lance.
went up.
Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean,
even
Frank Reich and Josh McCown really wanted CJ Stroud, and the owner stepped in, traded the house, and then picked Bryce Young, and then fired everybody. And then Frank Reich is the best job in the world, fired head coach, and he's making about 20 million a year.
I just don't understand why you trade the house to move up. What was it like? They didn't move up a lot when they were moving up for Bryce Young. What was it? Only like 1 pick, 2 picks?
Well, when they moved up for Bryce Young, they were coming from 9, so they
Okay.
had to come up. They had to come up a little bit, and so they traded the 9, a first round pick, DJ Moore, and I think a third or fourth. And so
You
they,
do that for generational talent, in my opinion.
yeah, if you think Bryce Young is going to be as good as CJ Stroud as, you do it, and they just they picked the wrong player. We'll
I mean, it's
see.
kind of like when Chris
Could be
Weinke.
better situation.
Mhm.
I don't know that you can label Bryce Young a flat out bust yet. I mean, but we are drifting closer to that boat than we are away from it. So
Yeah, he's and they have no first round pick this year, so
right, yeah.
they got to do something.
So, David, what were your let's go ahead and keep going in the draft. We stopped at pick 6. Let's go 6 to 20. That way we get about halfway through so we can kind of see what you're thinking before some of the possible trades.
Yeah, so of course, like I said, trades are going to be extremely hard to predict. So, in this mock draft, I stayed away from that. Um, if if the Giants were to stick there and McCarthy's off the board, I don't think that they take Penix at 6. What I have going on is I have, um, I would then put Malik Neighbors on the Giants. They desperately need a number 1 receiver, and he is absolutely worth a top. He's worth a top 3 pick. The Giants getting him at 6. He might be the second or third best player on the entire draft. Then at 7, I think the Titans run this one up. It's a great tackle draft, but Joe Alt goes there. This guy has had 4 penalties his entire career in over 2,000 snaps, 2 holds, 2 false starts. He's almost 6'9". He's just a mauler, and they need tackles. Dallas Turner to the Falcons, Roma Dunze to the Bears. Bears could go a lot of different directions. Roma Dunze would be kind of you're really giving Caleb Williams some weapons if you gave him Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore, and Cole Kmet, and DeAndre Swift. But they could also go offensive line. His high school teammate is Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, and they could put him there. They could put Talise Fuaga there at the tackle, or go with one of the edge rushers, Jared Verse or Leatu Latu. I got Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State, tackle, going to the Jets. The Jets could go receiver. They could go tackle here. But depth is important, and protecting Aaron Rodgers is going to be everything for the Jets this year. They got Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith is, he feels like he's been in the league for 20 years. He's a little older, and he's got some injuries with his back and stuff. So they kind of got a plan for him to miss a few games, and you need a future left tackle. So Fuaga can jump in there, play guard a little bit, play either side of the line, and then be the future tackle. And there's so many receivers, you can get a receiver later. I got Michael Penix going to the Vikings at 11 because I did no trades. and Penix. I think they want to get, the Broncos, the 11 is the Vikings, 12 is the Broncos, 13 is the Raiders. That is quarterback alley. And so if anyone wants a quarterback, they're going to have to get ahead of that. And, these guys might be kind of jostling around. So again, the Vikings are in the best position to move up. Broncos, they got Zach Wilson, so they don't need a quarterback anymore. I'm just kidding. I think that they definitely are going to try to get one. They've met with everybody. I think Bo Nix fits that scheme really well. But Spencer Rattler in the second round, third round could be an interesting play. I got Quinyon Mitchell's the top corner going to the Raiders. J.C. Latham going to Alabama. He's Alabama going to the Saints. And so he's a ready-made right tackle. Could probably play some left. And they are still not sure if Ryan Ramczyk is going to retire. He's got some ankle issues and things like that. The Saints probably know. And so their pick will tell us. If not, I think they go edge. Colts, Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers could go a lot higher, but I just think with the way that the tackles and quarterbacks are, he's going to go a little lower. Seahawks, I have Graham Barton, and I listed him at center. So he was tackle last year. He played center as a freshman. He can really move around the offensive line. I think that they really need somebody on the interior. And so Graham Barton goes there. Terrion Arnold, look up his speech from the combine. One of the best speeches you'll hear. But this guy is a good corner out of Alabama. And to the Jaguars. Byron Murphy to the Bengals. That could change if they do end up trading. Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins both requested a trade today.
Yep. Okay.
So the NFL is definitely the NFL, the way they spend money in free agency tells you a lot about the league. There's an emphasis on interior pass rushers and interior offensive linemen right now. They're getting paid. And so I have Byron Murphy at 18, and then I have Zerjon Johnny Newton at 19, Bengals and Rams. And then I got Troy Fatanu, tackle out of Washington, but he's a little shorter. He's like 6'4". He doesn't necessarily have the tackle build, and he might move inside. I've seen some boards where he's the top center in the draft. But Troy Fatanu, kind of a five position flex, going to the Steelers. They really, really need a center because they let Mason Cole walk, and they don't have a center right now.
Okay. No, I mean that's definitely thorough, and I mean so some of those picks I'm just curious about because we know that different trades are going to happen, and yeah, when I saw about the Bengals, how they had T. Higgins and Hendrickson both request trades, that's going to make it a lot more difficult for not just the players on the team, but also any people who are getting drafted thinking, hey, these two players, if they aren't traded, they could be thinking they could learn from them. So I mean, it feels like for a leadership standpoint as well, it's gonna be more of a hindrance than anything else. That's the best. I think that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah,
Because that's how it is whenever you have drafts.
yeah, it changes things, you know. Like I said, the Ramczyk situation for the Saints, I'm assuming they know. The Giants, Darren Waller, talking about potentially, retiring. Um, the Giants probably need to know that before the draft. And they probably do. Last year, the Jaguars had a tackle suspended right before the draft. And so what did they do? They drafted a tackle in the first round. Maybe that was not the intention. Maybe it was. But those kind of things will affect you. And T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk has also requested a trade. Both those guys could be dealt. And so after the top three receivers, Brian Thomas is the consensus number four. But if you want to if you can afford to pay him, because you're going to have to pay him, and they can't just trade for T. Higgins, you have to pay him. But man, Buffalo, if they could get T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk for pick 28, that's a slam dunk. And so I think the Bills could do that. The Bills are also rumored to be possibly trading up for a receiver. I've seen a lot of stuff where they do that. The Eagles, Dan Jeremiah said that the Eagles are likely trading up for either Terrion Arnold or Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama.
Alabama.
And Howie Roseman is an aggressive, and then the Rams, this is the first time the Rams have had a first round pick in forever. Like, I don't even, it's like, they found money in the washer or the dryer. So I don't know what they're going to do with it, but it's the first time they've had a first round pick since they used it on Jared Goff.
That's about 6-7 years ago. So yeah.
That's been a while.
Now, I was able to look up something that for draft picks. I found out that high schools with the most NFL draft picks. Do you know what the two schools that are tied at the top for NFL draft picks from high schools?
No, that school from Florida, John Bosco.
Surprisingly, no. You have IMG Academy and St. Thomas Aquinas, those with
Yeah,
18 picks over the last decade. Then you have American Heritage in Florida with 11, Allen High School in Texas with 8. They tied with DeMatha and Northwestern in Florida with 8. Then in 7 you have Bishop Gorman, Cass Tech, Glenville, Ohio, Long Beach Poly, California, Miami Central Florida, and Sarah, California, all with 7 picks over the last decade.
pretty crazy.
So I mean, I was looking it up because I was like, I know that for prep we usually hear a lot about it, although you don't always hear about it come draft time. But when you're seeing it in college and how they talk about that there, it's something that you're gonna hear about at one point. So,
Yeah, it's fun. I
so
was
we have.
I was doing a little profile on somebody, and I didn't even realize he goes to the high school. He went to the high school right down the road from me. And so Austin Booker out of Kansas, probably a day 2 pick,
Mhm.
edge rusher. And so what I was looking at is, on Walter Football, they have a nice tracker that shows you all the visits the players are doing. And, Field Yates also put a thing about him. It's like, this guy's really popular. And so kind of 2 sleeper edge guys, Marshawn Nealand out of Western Michigan. I think he's met with 15, 16 teams. Very, very busy guy this offseason. Probably a day 2 pick, like second round. And then Austin Booker out of Kansas. And then I'll give you a third one, Christian Boyd. I think he's met with 16 teams from his pro. Like, these are formal visits where he's going out and working with the team. Christian Boyd
Mhm.
out of Northern Iowa. And so the reason you see that with some of these smaller school guys, like the Giants, Washington and North Carolina have pro day on the same day. Washington has probably 15 players that the Giants could be interested in. North Carolina's got 3. So they're going to go to the Washington one and then fly Drake May and do a private workout with him, which is what they did. And so these small school guys, like, no one's taking a day and spending all their resources going to Western Michigan or whatever, but then they bring them around. And so Christian Boyd, Austin Booker, and Marshawn Nealand, look for them to go early, day 2, or whether it's round 2 or 3.
Okay. Bob, do you have any questions about picks 5 through 20?
No, not about that.
Okay. Just because I saw you had a question. So, what's the question you got?
Well, one question I would have is, do you think the portal has helped or hurt people when it comes to the draft, or makes no difference whatsoever?
Yeah, I think it's helped people. Number one, when I talk to the players, I said, how I asked them, I said, how does it help you having success at two different programs? And number one, they get to speed up their opportunity. There's a lot of guys like you when you go to commit to a team or a coach, you're probably being told you're going to be guaranteed some playing time or you're going to have the opportunity. But if they're a backup behind, like Caleb Williams was Spencer Rattler, like Spencer Rattler got
Mm-hmm.
dethroned because of Caleb Williams. Now he's going to sit there for 3 years and then just kill his draft stock. So it gives them opportunity, but it also like you just show them off in different ways because not like college is so interesting because there's so many different variants of offenses. And so you get to see guys that are playing in different schemes. So they talked about scheme flexibility. And of course, you want to see a guy progress. And so you look at a guy like Jaden Daniels, who Arizona State guy, goes to LSU. He was okay in LSU, but this year really popped. And so being able to see his progression really good. But Jaden Daniels would not be where he's at without that transfer.
100%. But I mean, even with that transfer, in some ways, the high thing you kind of saw a little SEC bias there. But the other thing
Oh,
is, the NCAA talked about how now if you transfer and your grades are good enough, you can play. Which before last year we had that issue with the Florida State, North Carolina. So this year, hopefully, we won't have that issue. How do you feel about that?
yeah, at the end of the day, I get it, but I mean it's not high school, and so those guys, a lot of them are on scholarship, or they're came there to play, play football, and they have to. The NFL forces them to. Now I guess they could do like the arena football, CFL or something ahead of time, but because they're
Hmm.
they're forced to do that, and if their grades are great are good, like that is something that's good, but if they're not, then for me, I feel like a lot of these guys that is their career path right now, and we'd like to see them all get straight A's and have a backup plan. But
I mean, it's going to be a work in progress no matter what. So
yeah,
let's go
it's
ahead and
different. I mean, you saw Saban retired. I mean, NIL has changed the game, and I don't know if
Mhm.
necessarily in a good way, but um, you got the NIL going on. These players are coming in. They're already millionaires. It's not the same thing. They're coming in and they've already made money when you got guys that were, in the past were coming in and didn't make anything. So that is a
Mhm.
big difference here. It's also caused players to stay later. And then COVID on top of it, you have a lot of older prospects. So you see players that are 25, 24 years old coming into the draft. And you saw it last year as well. And so you see it this year. There's a lot of older players. And the problem with older players is, they might be more finished products. And so you have a 21-year-old that was playing against 21-year-olds and he was really good. But he got a 24, 25-year-old that was beaten up on a bunch of 21-year-olds and he goes to the NFL and maybe doesn't have the same type of success. So, you do like to see those early declares from a, breakout standpoint, analytics standpoint.
Very fair. Let's go ahead and do picks 21 through 32 so we get through the first round, and then if you want, we can go more in depth on a few positions.
All right. Well, I have Olu Fashanu, tackle from Penn State, going to the Dolphins. They lost a lot of linemen, both sides of the ball in free agency. Nate Wiggins ran the fastest 40 out of the corners, goes to the Eagles. Philly needs corner help. Leatu Latu, he might be the best defensive player in this draft, but he was actually medically retired during his college career, had a neck fusion, and then he went to a different school and they, cleared him to play. And so he could go top 10, he could go round 2 or 3. It depends on that medical. He's going to be a very interesting player, but he's probably the best pass rusher in this draft. Leatu Latu, edge out of UCLA. Jackson Powers Johnson, Cowboys need a center. He's a big dude. And so he's going to set a firm pocket and be able to maul and brawl. They need something there. Cooper DeJean, I got him going to the Packers. He's a corner safety. I think he's be more of a nickel corner safety, hybrid kind of a player. He did play corner in college. He did some man, but they ran a lot of zone concept. I don't know if he can necessarily hold up outside. Amarius Mims, tackle from Georgia, huge dude. He's 6'8", 6'8.5". Going to Tampa. Damian Chop Robinson from Penn State, going to the Cardinals. Brian Thomas Jr. going to the Bills. Kool-Aid McKinstry going to the Lions. Troy Franklin to the Ravens. And then I got Tyler Guyton going to the Niners and Jordan Morgan, both tackles. Jordan Morgan going to the Chiefs.
All right. So in the end, that was 5 quarterbacks. I want to say 3 wide receivers, and it was 5 offensive linemen. Is that about right?
There was
a
lot of tackles. And the tackles, it's a very good class, but the depth kind of sharply cuts off. And so I think that was 6 tackles and 3 interior. I got 3 interior, so that's about 9 offensive linemen, 5 quarterbacks and 5 receivers. And so the reason I don't have as many receivers is because there's so many good ones. And so if you can get a good receiver in the 2nd round, 3rd round, and you can't get a tackle, like the Chiefs, everybody wants Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs. Everybody wants Xavier Worthy to the Dolphins. Okay, well, if you get an A tackle or a B tackle in the 1st round versus an A versus a C or a D tackle in the 2nd round, do you still want Xavier Worthy? Because the tackles is just, there is a lot, but they're going to go fast because so many teams need tackles, because a lot of teams they don't have one edge rusher. You have left side only. It's both sides. So you're having to protect both sides, and everybody needs at least 2. So there needs to be 48, not 48. There needs to be 64 tackles, and there's not 64 good tackles in the NFL.
That is true. You're lucky if you find even one for some teams.
Tackle is more of a lifetime position to me than a receiver, because when we see all these deals, you don't see tackles normally getting dealt, at least really good tackles. I mean, you will every now and again, but you'll see a lot more receivers move than tackles. So I'm with you, Dave. You take that tackle first, and you can even if the tackle class wasn't rich, I still want to get an A-class tackle over an A-class receiver, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, and again, it comes down to depth. But when you look at it for like the franchise tag of how expensive tackles are, you save a lot of money if you draft a tackle versus a running back. And so, you save that money with that 5th-year option. So they broke down the hit rate for 1st-round picks. The position with the highest hit rate was center. There was only 12, but 11 of those 12 were hits, 92%. Tackles, they graded 38. I don't know, 64 tackles, 38 were hits, 59%. Guards, 28, 14 hit, 50%. Linebackers, 48. Quarterbacks, 46. Edge, 44. D tackle, 40. Receiver, first round receivers, 27%. 77 receivers, 56 of them were misses. And so, again, it's another position where you're almost like look at quarterback and receiver. That's where you see a lot of reaches. Daniel Jones going at 6. He's probably not the 6th best player in that draft. But when you reach, you're creating the opportunity for that bust.
That's fair. I mean, the question is for the players that are going to be drafted starting tomorrow and into Friday, how many of those players that are at the top are going to be successful or are they going to be a bust? That's the question. And not only that, how is it going to affect which teams they're joining and what schools they were drafted from? Just because, I mean, when you're looking out, you see that some schools players go there just because it's linebacker you or wide receiver you or offensive tackle you, depending on the situation. So it's a conundrum, but it's a good conundrum just because watching it, not only is it Christmas for you, like you said, but it's just seeing how everything's going to pan out, even starting out and then going into training camp and into preseason, just seeing how good of a fit it is for the different teams. Now, for the Patriots, how weird do you think it's going to be with Bill Belichick not being there for the first time in 20 some years?
Yeah, it's gonna be weird. And unfortunately, Bill Belichick, the GM, let down Bill Belichick, the coach. Somebody made the comment, and I think it's so true. Like the Patriots, you look at their roster, it looks like an
Mhm.
expansion team. I mean, they're bad. It's a very, very bad roster. And so you don't get cute and trade out of 3 if you like these quarterbacks. But man, it makes a hell of a lot of sense to trade out of 3 if they can, because they are probably 2 years away from being a year away.
I think in some ways that's too much credit toward them, but we're just going to have to wait and see depending on what happens. Bob, do you have a question?
No, I mean, I totally agree with what Dave said right there because, it's not like the Patriots are one player away. And if you're not one player away, I'm going to try to trade down and get some more quality. I mean, it's funny. I remember when I was a kid growing up, the Patriots were 1-15, and then they hit 6-10. Then they hit 2-14. They didn't become over 500 on a consistent basis until 2001 ish, maybe. And it almost feels like we're getting to the point of the Patriots hitting the commode quite frequently before they can get out of the commode and sit on the couch.
I
Yeah,
mean, the
it's
Patriots had a little bit of luck when Bledsoe was their quarterback. They didn't make the Super Bowl, but it just,
Consistent though, consistently they started winning 10 games a lot once Tom Terrific was there. But I mean, you had a few good seasons, but then it dropped to like 6-10, 5-11. It Patriots haven't gone 6-10 and 5-11 on a consistent basis in a good long while. And now it's going to it'd be good if they could go 6-10 for 2 years in a row almost.
yeah, and the division made a big turnaround. You saw the Dolphins got better fast, the Bills got better fast, and the Jets got better fast. Those are three playoff teams, and potential playoff teams. And then you have the Patriots, who are very much in the running for the #1 pick next year.
very true. Although, I'm kind of curious to see how Buffalo is gonna approach this draft just because of them trading away Stephon Diggs, and then they had so many starters leave via free agency.
Yeah, the Bills are hurting off that Josh Allen contract. I mean, that's what happens. When you pay the quarterback, it's very difficult. And so, the Chiefs, they've done a masterful job of being able to navigate. They have one of the youngest defenses in the league, and their secondary coach has done a phenomenal job because they have one of the best defenses in the league. And I think maybe one of those guys, one of the starters, is not drafted. I think the entire defense has been drafted by them. And then, they're almost all on rookie contracts. So when they start having to pay those guys, that might be trouble. But they got one of the cheapest defenses in the league, and that allows them to be able to afford, Patrick Mahomes' hefty salary. Unfortunately, they had to get rid of Tyreek Hill, but obviously still won a Super Bowl without him.
I guess one final question I would have real quick, Dave, is it seems like, in the NBA, it seemed like Phil Jackson was not a draft fan for many years. Greg Popovich wasn't a big draft fan until he had the number one pick type thing. Is there anybody in the NFL that quote unquote hates the draft?
Yeah, I mean the most famous is Les Snead from the Rams, and so I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on the show, but he has the mug. Have you guys seen the mug?
Oh.
It says "F those picks." So you have to look it up. Yeah, Les Snead has a mug that says, and it doesn't say F. It says the four letters, F those picks. And so, and another team that loves to trade back is the Seattle Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
They love the draft, and they absolutely demolished like day 2 and 3 better than almost anybody. But I could see the Rams and Seattle both being like, you know what? There's not, there's no one else that we love in this spot, and just trading back to the second or third round and letting, somebody else jump up. Like, I think the Rams trading out would be hilarious. They finally get a first round pick and then they trade back into the second round would be hilarious.
I mean, I could see that happening, although for them, they're going to start to get used to the post Aaron Donald regimen, just because, I mean, he was a Hall of Fame player, and I mean, he did everything he could do, so we wish him the best of luck in retirement. But the question is how the Rams are going to reload in that respect on the defense, because, I mean, he was someone who everyone feared him, let's be honest. I mean, TJ Watt, you don't fear as much, but Aaron Donald, when you saw him coming, you were hoping that you could get rid of the ball or someone was going to block him. Otherwise, you were going to be in a lot of pain very quickly.
Yeah, he's irreplaceable. There's no one's going to replace him. But there is some good D linemen in this class. And last year they hit a home run with Kobe Turner. I can't think of where he came from. I think maybe Wake Forest. But Kobe Turner was great. It'll be a little bit harder for him this year without Aaron Donald taking triple teams. But Kobe Turner was better than Jalen Carter last year, and he was like a 5th-round pick. He's really good. And then, they could get Johnny Newton from Illinois. You also have Byron Murphy out of Texas, Braden Fisk out of Florida State. Those all are guys that are in the running for them first round, second round.
Okay. Well, that's definitely that's interesting just because there are different players that some you've mentioned, some you haven't, and it's waiting to see what's going to happen with every team, what trades are going to happen, who's going to stay in the first round, who's going to back out. I'm wondering if there are going to be certain teams that are going to try to make 2 or 3 picks in the first round, even though it's going to possibly mess up the rest of their draft, like you guys are saying, for different picks. But I could see maybe a team like either the Patriots or probably say like the Cardinals would be a team that would try to do that just because they want to try to get as many higher draft picks as they could, like say get a quarterback, get an offensive tackle, or even a wide receiver, depending on the situation. I could see them doing that, just trying to make a splash. I mean, Vegas, you won't really see them do it as much, even though their Antonio Pierce is going to be his first full season of coaching. But I think that he already has a basic setup going. It's more just seeing what had new first year head coaches, if they do want to make a splash, how they're going to make it either in the first round or if they trade back into seeing how, I guess, how they work their draft this time and what's going to come from it. Is that fair to say?
Well, and most head coaches are not the GM, and so um, Tom Telesco, the Chargers' previous GM, is now the GM over, um, over the Raiders now, and so he's not
Mhm.
necessarily someone that's traded a lot, but the Cardinals, that's a guy that traded a lot. You look at Sean Payton, every year Sean Payton's traded up with his first pick. So the Broncos, even though they don't have a second round pick because of Sean Payton, the Broncos could be someone in play. But again, they don't have a second round pick, so it makes it harder. It makes it more likely the Broncos trade back so they can, let's say the Broncos trade from 12 to 20 and they get a second round pick and a third round pick to get more. When you look at it, you look at teams with they don't have a lot of draft capital. It's less likely that they're going to move up. It's more likely they move back, and the opposite.
Mhm.
You know, and the Cardinals, like one play, trade that I played out the other day was they trade back to Minnesota. They let Minnesota go to 4. They take Drake May or JJ McCarthy. They're at
Mhm.
11. They're in striking distance for Rome Odunze. They already have pick 27 from the Texans, and they get pick 23. So you have 3 first-round picks in that situation for the Cardinals, and they still get Rome Odunze, who is a lot of people say he's a number 1 in every draft except for this one.
Mhm.
It's just such a loaded class, but he's an excellent receiver with great size, and people really like him.
Well, that's definitely a good thing. I mean, it just since you did bring up a Doomsday, who are your top wide receivers you're looking at for the first round?
Yeah, my top five wide receivers: Marvin Harrison Jr.,
Hmm.
Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze. Those guys are all in a league of their own. And then Brian Thomas Jr. He's an interesting player. He's a 1 year guy, and so when you
Hmm.
have a 1 year wonder, that's kind of tough. But he just brings some crazy speed and some, just playmaking ability. And then Adonai Mitchell is my number 5. So there's a lot of good receivers in this draft. I think a sleeper people love is Malachi Corley out of Western
Hmm.
Kentucky. He's called the Yak King from Steve Smith. So Malachi Corley, look him up. He's got guys just bounce off him. He's a Debo Samuel comp.
Okay. So, who would be your top five quarterbacks? I mean, I know you've already gone through, I know you've already gone basically through them, but
Yeah.
who would you say?
Top five quarterbacks: Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and then at number 3, I have JJ McCarthy at number 3, then Drake May, and then Michael Penix.
Okay. What about for cornerbacks?
Corner. The number
Hmm.
1 corner is Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, small school guy, showed up at the Senior Bowl in the Combine. He fits the bill. He's good. Terrion Arnold. Then you have Kool-Aid McKistry, and then Nate Wiggins. And then for my 5th guy, it's I actually I don't even can't remember who my 5th guy is. But a guy that I really like that is probably not my 5th, but Max Melton out of Rutgers is someone that is so my fifth guy is Mike Sanistrell out of Michigan. He's more of a nickel
Okay.
corner. But when we asked all the Michigan players who was the leader on the defense, he was the unanimous pick. He's a team captain. I could see the Chargers scooping him up in the second round, trying to bring in a culture guy. But Mike Sanistrell out of Michigan is my fifth.
Okay. Bob, is there a position you're curious about for the top five?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, since I'm going to pick your brain a little bit more, David, for linebackers, who's your top five? I don't know if you do middle linebacker or inside linebacker or outside linebacker, if you separated that or not.
No, and the edge guys are kind of all the same. And so for me, the number one is Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M. He's got all the tools, all the size you're looking for. He can stay on the field all three downs because of his coverage ability. Junior Colson out of Michigan, more of a downhill guy. His coverage isn't as good. And so that's the only kind of knock on him. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. You would probably know his dad. And so he's another guy that I like a lot. I think he's really good. But with him, he's also another guy that doesn't have the best coverage. And Peyton Wilson from NC State. I actually have Peyton Wilson a little higher. I got him at 3 spot ahead of Jeremiah Trotter. And then for the fifth linebacker, it is Tommy Eichenberg out of Ohio State.
I was wondering if he was going to be a pick of yours. I actually, before I wore my Redskins shirt today, I almost pulled out my Tommy Eichenberg jersey.
Nice. Yeah,
So,
it's an interesting group. Not the best linebacker class. There's some fun guys, but the depth in this class is, edge rushers, D linemen, and corners for the defense.
oh yeah. No, I mean, Eichenberg last year, he had broke both his hands and still was playing. So this year he was able to not have that happen. So that's why I remember that. But for D lineman, who's your top five for that?
So just interior defensive linemen, Byron
Mhm.
Murphy's my 1, Johnny Newton 2, Braden Fisk, Chris Jenkins, and then Brandon Dorius out of
Mhm.
Oregon. He's got edge and D line, but he's more of a inside guy.
Okay. So, are there any players that from Virginia schools that you say looked at for this?
Virginia. So Virginia, Malik Washington, and then West Virginia, Zach Frazier. Zach Frazier is a center, 2-time state champ, wrestler. I think he goes early, day 2. I got him mocked to the Carolina Panthers at pick 33. And then Malik Washington, probably a 3rd-round pick. He actually had the most yards after the catch in the country last year. He's another guy that is just he's a bowling ball. He's a little shorter for a receiver, but he turns into a running back when he gets the ball in his hands. And people just can't tackle this dude. He's just, he's just nasty when he gets the ball in his hand.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the time you've given us. Is there any player that we haven't talked about so far that you want to make sure to mention before the draft starts?
Well, running backs. Well, so it's it's definitely not a great running back class. And part of that is just because the NFL does not value running backs. But there is still good running backs. And so you're going to be able, if your team needs a running back, you're going to be able to get a starter. And so the Dallas Cowboys,
Mhm.
they're going to draft a starter in the 2nd or 3rd round. And so Trey Benson's my number 1. My number 2
Okay.
is Jonathan Brooks Jalen Wright out of Tennessee at number 3. Number 4, Blake Corum. And then number 5 is Marshawn Lloyd. But Braylon Allen, there's Audric Estime. There's a lot of good guys that are going to go in that third, that, round 2 through 5 is going to be probably 15 running backs off the board.
That's definitely gonna be something to see. So besides the running backs and all the other positions we've talked about, is there anyone else that you want to talk about or bring up?
Then we covered it. I mean,
Okay.
the safety position is the only thing we didn't cover. And
Go ahead.
there's Tyler Newbin is the number 1 safety. Jaden Hicks and Javon Bullard are really good. Javon Bullard's out of Georgia. Jaden Hicks out of Washington State. Kalen Bullock out of USC. And then Cameron Kitchens out of Miami. Ty Q Smith out of Georgia. And then Dadrion Taylor Demerson. Cole Bishop. I mean, there's starting safeties, probably 6 or 7. Like, it's a pretty good group. And it's another position that's kind of devalued. So you can get a 3rd or 4th round guy that's more of a, a starter. Most positions, 3rd or 4th rounders are not starters. Running back and safety are.
Okay. So I'm gonna play devil's advocate only for a second. The only positions that we haven't talked about is special teams. So there are 5 players total from there that you looked at it all. I mean, if you have 5 kickers and 5 punters, you can. But if you got, what do you have? Like, do you have anybody for those positions?
I'd lie if I said I paid a lot of attention to the kickers and the punters, but the kid out of Iowa is really good. I think that the Alabama kid's good too, but the kid out of Iowa is probably gonna be the first guy drafted as punter.
Okay. No, I mean, that's why for me, I kind of figured that's what you were going to say. But if I didn't at least ask, I wouldn't be trying to do my due diligence for this before we get the
Of
draft
course, of
going. So,
course.
but other than everything we've gone over, is there anything else you can think of before you get to open up your presence tomorrow when you're watching the draft?
No, I hope my Giants don't mess it up. We'll see. We'll see.
I'm curious to see how your Giants do and also how my Commanders do, just because, well, I think it's going to be, I won't say a needle in a haystack, but it's not going to be very comforting seeing how it is for some of these picks, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's when you get a new
But
quarterback and having a new system, it's all can be exciting and scary at the same time.
exactly, that is definitely true. Well, sir, I thank you for coming on. And if we were going to try to find you outside of here, what would be the best ways to get a hold of you?
You can get me at Dynasty Dorks on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then follow my work at SGPN Sports Gambling Podcast Network.
Perfect. For me, well, I know Bob Alvis was on earlier, and unfortunately he had to leave. If you're going to try to find him, you find him on Twitter or X at the Sports Buffet. For me, you would find me at Alan F. West on Twitter, Alan.WestF46. I don't post much, but I always try to keep track of everything that's going on. But David, I appreciate all the time that you've given us today, and I hope that tomorrow you have your beverages and your snacks ready so that you can enjoy the draft, and hopefully we'll be able to get you back on and maybe do a recap at some point just to see how the picks went and how many of what you forecasted turned out. Like you said, last year was 7 in the first round. I'm gonna hope you get 12. How about that? We're gonna aim higher this year. How about
Let's hope so.
that? But I thank you for your time, and This has been the top 25 rundown. Have a great week, everyone.